Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions regarding this watch. And this watch is a 2026 release. This is the new Omega Constellation Observatory, the first example that's crossed my desk. And before this goes out to one of our stores, I want to focus on documenting a watch that's been on a lot of people's minds. It's an interesting return to very classical design for the Constellation. Of course, the Griffin Claw design, the Manhattan, that debuted in the 1980s, has been the dominant Constellation design since the 80s. But in 2015, Omega gave us a little bit of an indulgence. For those who wanted an older style, the Pan Constellation Globemaster brought back the Pan dial, the dodecagon, but the Globemaster was also a bit of a tonneau case that didn't quite deliver the classical flagship Constellation dress watch that a lot of old school Omega collectors wanted. With this Constellation Observatory, I feel like we have what people wanted the Globemaster to be. It's an interesting watch, and it does have a premium price, so let's talk about whether it's worth the money. It's 39.4 millimeters in diameter in steel, and you can see in profile it's reasonably thin for an automatic modern tri-level coaxial Omega. It's 12.4 as I measure it. It's 47.4 lug-to-lug. It's got a little bit of a vintagey 19 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Now, this strap is not broken in, so it's very stiff. So on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters circumference, I'm going to have to pull the strap a little bit tight, creating the impression that the watch is actually broader than it is. But I can comfortably recommend this for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters in circumference. Even over the top, which exaggerates the width of the watch, you can see that the lugs are not out beyond the edge of my wrist. Down the barrel is a pretty true angle, and again, this strap will soften up and constrict the wrist less as we go on. It is pretty flat, and you can see it's got a rather glassed box profiled sapphire designed to give it the look of a 1950s plexi. And so a lot of the height of the watch is that crystal, so it will easily slide under a cuff and a sleeve will ramp up and over it. Omega did not skimp on the strap here. You can see it's a interesting color. I would say almost taupe being the color I'm seeing here. Somewhere between almost a gray with a purple undertone. It's a little bit difficult to describe, but sort of a taupe look, like maybe brown and gray combined. It's a difficult color to express, but I can tell you this, money was spent. Although it has a vaguely gloss taupe look to it, it does have large, rectangular, very symmetrical scale alligator leather. And so that large rectangular symmetrical scale is an expensive cut of the beast, and it's exactly what you want on a premium watch. You can see that the lugs are not drilled all that close to the case, and I believe this decision was made for vintage reasons, where a super close-hauled strap-to-case junction was a little bit uncommon. So I think that's part of the vintage aesthetic of the watch, though it does extend it across the wrist a little bit. You can see in profile we have a folded edge. This is all gloss with a monotone stitch. We have black calfskin on the bottom. Of course, it's a fresh watch from the factory, so there's no crimping, no gouging, there's none of that. We have an Omega logo on a rather simple pin buckle design. Just have a little bit of a soft bevel on the side. So from weird gloss taupe strap to steel case, now I can much more comfortably describe this as steel with brushed and polished facets, and also a little bit of a step lug and what Omega describes as a dog-leg kink to the lugs. Now, I'm not sure that's the most romantic verbalization of whatever this shape is, but I will give them this. It is true to their watches of the late 40s and early 50s, and that is sort of the design touchstone for this watch. It's a combination of the original 1952 Pan Constellation with the 1948 Omega Centenary watch. So the 100th anniversary piece of 48 informs a lot of the aesthetic here, but the Pan dial design of the first Constellation is really what informs the dial here. We have these lovely strakes, creating almost the appearance that the planes of the Pan are tiered. And then all of the dial hardware is not just gold in color, it is in fact solid gold. So we have Sedna red gold for star hands, logo marquee, and indices. And you can see that the indices are thoughtful and nuanced. They are applique, faceted, and polished, but we have this lovely fluting at the four corners, 12, 3, 6, and 9. Alpha-style hands with some faceting for better contrast against the dial center, and a soft silver opaline non-directional metallic. You can see that this is a two-hand watch, and yet it is a master chronometer. And Omega has worked to make this the first two-hand master chronometer watch. Generally, to achieve a chronometer certification, whether COSC or METAS, you need to have a seconds hand. So with the Laboratoire de Précision and certification by METAS of the Laboratoire, we have a watch that can now, via high-speed photography and acoustic means, be certified as a master chronometer. So it's possible to time this to fractions of a second without actually having a seconds hand. So what we do have is an automatic movement on the back that's based on the long-running 8500 series architecture, which as a master chronometer became the 8900 series. And you can see the little observatory logo to remind us that the original Constellation of 1952 was an observatory chronometer. This is fundamentally the 8900 that we've known, albeit with a different rotor and no seconds hand on the dial. We still have some of the functional modes of the watch with the seconds hand. We have an independently mobile hour hand. And then, although we don't have seconds, out back, if you look at the balance, when I pull the crown out, the balance stops. So I wouldn't call this stop seconds, but it is hacking. It's still a 60-hour automatic with two barrels, with the barrels really being here more for a flat torque curve than a really long power reserve. 38 joules, essentially amagnetic, with a full balance bridge and a free sprung balance, also very shock resistant, beaten away at a quirky 25,200 vibration per hour rate. And of course it has the George Daniels coaxial system here, actualized as the tri-level coaxial. And people ask me what that means. And what it means is that the coaxial planes that are used to interact with the escapement are separated from the drivetrain. So the original versions that were two-level had one wheel that was both the final wheel in the drivetrain and interacting with the escapement, and that didn't work well. So what we have here is a gear that acts as the interaction between the drivetrain and the coaxial wheels, and then we have one plane that is impulsing the escapement, and then we have another plane below that that is also impulsing. One of these planes is going to be direct impulse, the other is going to be indirect impulse, that is impulse by means of a lever. So direct impulse against the balance, indirect by means of a lever, and then one layer that is just the last gear in the drivetrain. So that's what's meant by tri-level coaxial, and it's a more reliable system. It improves power reserve, chronometry, reduces maintenance requirements. The key to the coaxial is that it uses tangential friction rather than the sliding friction of a Swiss lever. The master chronometer certification is exacting. This watch may not have a seconds hand, but it is accurate to no worse than -0 +5 seconds per 24 hours. And METAS has certified the Precision Laboratory to deliver both the chronometer and the master chronometer certification for this watch. Aside from the precision aspect of it, water resistance, power reserve, winding efficiency, durability, and anti-magnetism are tested. With an anti-magnetic silicon hairspring, anti-magnetic balance staff, and escapement, the watch is secure at over 15,000 Gauss. That is a minimum, not a maximum. That's 1.5 Tesla and above. And this is all 30 meters water resistant, which is dress watch standard, so don't go swimming with it, but it's going to be a very capable all-arounder, as the same basic movement architecture is used in a lot of Omega sports watches, and it's very durable. You can see we've got a combination of polish and satin. We have arabesque or spiral Côte de Genève, blackened and polished screws, engine turning on the base plate, and a machined but handsome bevel. So there is a lot to love here. On this watch, I would say on elegance, precision, and technical sophistication, this watch delivers. It is a formidable achievement aesthetically before we get to the movement on the inside, and I think this does a great job of setting Omega's dress watches apart from, for example, Rolex's 1908. So I think this is a very strong strong identity for Omega dress watches, and it feels like the constellation that Western collectors have requested for a long time, and also a suitably upscale big brother to some of the DeVilles and the equal of the Rolex 1908. So game on, let the best watch win. This watch, of course, is a 2026, so if you want to visit our 1916 locations that carry Omega, you could see it and try it on firsthand.